The history of global exploration has often portrayed Africans as passive and isolated people who were only discovered by the outside world. This misconception has obscured a rich history of African maritime exploration, where sailors, merchants, and diplomats from across the continent navigated vast oceans, established trade networks, and engaged with cultures far beyond their own shores. This video presents a detailed, fact-based account of their voyages and discoveries, from antiquity to the modern era, challenging the outdated notion of African isolation and revealing a continent deeply connected to the wider world through its own maritime endeavors. The Circumnavigation of Africa, commissioned by Egyptian pharaoh Necho II around 600 BC, represents one of the most remarkable maritime achievements of the ancient world. This extraordinary expedition predated Portuguese explorer Bartolomeu Dias by over 2,000 years and provides compelling evidence of ancient African maritime capabilities and strategic vision. Until the lions have their own historians, the history of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. The sole surviving account of this expedition comes from the Greek historian Herodotus in his work The Histories, 4.42, written in the 5th century BC. Herodotus received this information through oral tradition during his travels in Egypt, approximately 150 years after the expedition had taken place. According to his account, Necho commissioned Phoenician sailors to sail from the Red Sea around the African continent and return via the Mediterranean through the Straits of Gibraltar. The most compelling evidence for the expedition's authenticity lies in a detail that Herodotus himself found unbelievable. He recorded that the Phoenicians claimed that as they sailed westward around southern Africa, they had the sun on the right side, meaning to the north of them. Herodotus explicitly stated that he did not believe this claim, yet modern scholars recognize this astronomical observation as definitive proof that the expedition actually occurred. Only sailors who had crossed south of the equator would observe the sun in the northern sky, a phenomenon completely unknown to Mediterranean peoples of that era. More than 10,000 years ago, Africans began constructing boats to extend their fishing and trading capabilities beyond shoreline limitations. Archaeological evidence from the Atbara River, a Nile tributary in central Sudan, reveals the earliest documented use of boats for systematic fishing operations. At the Eldama, 8050 to 7800 BC, and Anibis, 7900 to 7600 BC sites, researchers found evidence of large-scale consumption of fish species that do not typically approach shorelines, indicating the use of boats to reach deeper waters. The El Salha archaeological project in central Sudan, located at the confluence of the Blue and White Niles near Khartoum, yielded humanity's oldest depiction of a boat, etched on a broken granite pebble dating between 7050 and 6820 BC. This image shows a vessel with a distinctive domed enclosure and large rear oar or anchor. The boat's design elements are consistent with other pre-dynastic ship depictions found throughout Sudan and Egypt, suggesting established maritime traditions and standardized vessel designs. The oldest actual boat discovered in Africa is the remarkable Dufuna canoe, dating to 6500 BC and making it the world's second oldest known vessel. A Fulani cattle herdsman discovered this extraordinary artifact while digging a well near Dufuna, Nigeria, close to the Komadugu-Ghana River in what researchers believe was once Lake Mega Chad, an ancient sea that preceded the current smaller Lake Chad. Measuring 27.6 feet in length, the Dufuna canoe demonstrates sophisticated craftsmanship and advanced understanding of hydrodynamics. The vessel is nearly 3 times longer than the Pesse canoe found in the Netherlands, previously considered the world's oldest boat, and exhibits far more sophisticated construction techniques. This remarkable artifact provides concrete evidence of ancient Africans' advanced maritime technology. Around 6000 BC, Saharan rock art at Tassili Ajar in southern Algeria began depicting boats alongside images of people using bows and arrows, suggesting maritime vessels were used for hunting expeditions and possibly early naval warfare. These depictions are particularly significant because they were created when the Sahara alternated between wet and dry cycles spanning approximately 20,000 years. During wet periods, the region would have been filled with rivers and lakes, making boat transportation essential for navigation and survival. The artistic record expands dramatically at Sabujadi in central Sudan, where petroglyphs from 4500 BC depict elaborate, large ships with tall sailing masts, large oars, covered superstructures, and chairs. These detailed representations appear across multiple sites in Egypt's central eastern desert, including Wadis Abu Subeira, Abu Wasil, Baramia, and Garib. The development of large-scale shipbuilding reached remarkable heights during Egypt's early dynastic period. At Abydos, archaeologists have uncovered 14 wooden vessels measuring up to 75 feet long and 10 feet wide, buried approximately 5,000 years ago in long brick enclosures. These ships, located at the tomb of Kasekemui of the Second Dynasty, 2675 BC, were likely buried during the reign of Aha of the First Dynasty, 2920 to 2770 BC, making them the world's oldest wooden boats that are not simple dugout canoes. The pinnacle of ancient African shipbuilding achievement is represented by Khufu's ship at Giza, dating to 2580 BC. The remains of this massive seafaring vessel were discovered buried next to Khufu's pyramid at the Giza complex. Archaeologists successfully reassembled 1,224 timber pieces to reconstruct a ship measuring 143 feet long by 19.5 feet wide, making it more than twice the length of Christopher Columbus's longest vessel. The construction of these massive vessels was thoroughly documented in ancient Egyptian art and inscriptions. At the mastaba of T at Saqqara, 2494 to 2345 BC, detailed depictions show shipbuilding processes with multiple workers using hand axes and specialized tools for construction, repair, and maintenance of ships. These images provide invaluable insights into ancient African engineering techniques and the sophisticated understanding of naval architecture required to build seaworthy vessels. The cultural tradition of ship burial evolved over time from disassembled vessels to fully assembled ships. The Kingdom of Kush, with its capital at Meroe, was a major power in the ancient world. As early as the 7th century BC, Kushite influence extended into Western Asia, and their envoys were a regular sight in the courts of the Eastern Roman Empire. In 22 to 20 BC, envoys of the Kushite queen Amanirenas undertook a diplomatic mission to the court of the Roman Emperor Augustus. A century later, in 61 to 63 CE, the Romans sent their own reconnaissance mission to Kush. The continued interaction between Kush and Rome is evidenced by a 3rd century inscription recording the diplomatic mission of a Nubian envoy named Sasan to Rome, and a Roman mural from Herculaneum depicting African priests participating in a ceremony honoring Isis. The Comoros archipelago, strategically positioned between the East African coast and Madagascar, served as a natural stopover and cultural crossroads for travelers and seafarers. During the Dembeni period, the archipelago functioned as a warehouse for Malagasy products, particularly rock crystal, which was described in external Arab accounts as one of the products exported from the Zanj coast in the 11th century to be reworked in Fatimid Egypt. The island of Mayotte likely served as a route for Holocene hunter-gatherers from Africa who traveled to Madagascar by island, hopping from the East African mainland. Archaeological evidence from Madagascar, including stone tools and bones with tool marks, dated to 2288 to 2035 BC and 402 to 204 BC, supports this theory of early African maritime migration. The Swahili coast developed a sophisticated maritime culture, building ships that plied the great water routes of the Indian Ocean, from the Arabian coast to as far as Malaysia and China. The discovery of copper coins minted in the medieval Swahili city of Kilwa between 1150 and 1330 CE on a remote northern Australian coastline in 1944 provides startling evidence of the vast distances covered by these East African sailors. These coins remain the oldest foreign objects ever found in Australia. In 1071 CE, an envoy from the East African island of Zanzibar, named Chenjiani, undertook a remarkable 160-day sea voyage to the court of the Song dynasty ruler Shenzong in China. His journey, which took him via Oman, India, and Indonesia, is documented in the official Chinese chronicle, The History of Song. The same envoy returned to China in 1083. Over the course of the 10th to 14th centuries, more than 8 envoys from 5 different African kingdoms are documented to have traveled to China. The most remarkable achievement of West African maritime exploration was the transatlantic voyage undertaken by Mansa Muhammad ibn Q, known as Mansa Abu Bakr II, the predecessor of Mansa Musa, around 1312. This expedition represents the first documented African exploration of the Americas, predating Columbus by 180 years. The account of this voyage was recorded by the Arab historian Al-Umari in 1324, when Mansa Musa recounted the story during his famous pilgrimage to Mecca. According to Musa's detailed account, his predecessor was determined to discover the furthest limit of the Atlantic Ocean. The Mali ruler first equipped 200 ships filled with men and an equal number loaded with gold, water, and provisions sufficient for years of travel. When only one ship returned with reports of a powerful ocean current, the Mansa dismissed the captain's account and organized a second, larger expedition. This time, he personally led 2,000 ships across the Atlantic, 1,000 carrying men and 1,000 loaded with water and provisions. The Mansa abdicated his throne to Musa and embarked on this monumental voyage, from which he never returned. The success of Mansa Abu Bakr II's Atlantic crossing is confirmed by the presence of guanine metal in pre-Columbian America. Guanine is a distinctive alloy, traditionally used in West Africa, composed of approximately 56% gold, 18% silver, and 25% copper. This specific metallurgical composition was unknown in the Americas before African contact, yet it appears extensively in pre-Columbian Central American artifacts. Christopher Columbus documented the presence of this African metal during his voyages, noting that indigenous peoples possessed spears and ornaments made from guanine. When analyzed, the gold Columbus found consisted of 32 parts, 18 of gold, 6 of silver, and 8 of copper, precisely matching the West African alloy composition. The natives informed Columbus that these items had been given to them by black-skinned people who had arrived from the south and southeast, carrying spear points made of this distinctive metal. The significance of guanine extends beyond its metallurgical composition. In West African tradition, this alloy was prized not only for its appearance, but for its distinctive odor when heated, a characteristic that made it particularly valuable in African cultures. The presence of this culturally specific metal in pre-Columbian America, combined with indigenous accounts of contact with African visitors, provides concrete evidence of successful transatlantic voyages by West African explorers. The technological capabilities that made transatlantic exploration possible were built upon extensive coastal and riverine networks. The Niger-Senegal-Gambia River Complex served as a vast hydrographic system that had produced sophisticated maritime technologies. River barges of the Songhai Empire could carry up to 30 tons of grain, while by the 1820s, vessels measuring 100 feet long and 14 feet wide transported 60 to 80 tons of cargo with crews of 18. Large canoes measuring 50 to 100 feet in length, 5 feet wide, and with capacities of up to 10 tons were fitted with square sails, masts, and rudders that enabled them to sail out to sea. Senegambian mariners transported cola nuts down the Gambia River and along the coast to Sierra Leone, a distance of 300 miles. The Mpongwe of Gabon were particularly renowned for their maritime prowess, using canoes up to 60 feet long, fitted with masts and sails. With capacities of over 10 tons, they regularly traveled 300 to 400 miles along the coast. A 19th century observer noted that the Mpongwe's boats were so well built that they would land them under favorable circumstances in South America. A prescient observation given the earlier transatlantic achievements of their West African predecessors. Africans were already present on the European mainland by the time Herodotus wrote his monumental work, The Histories. Herodotus' account mentions the presence of Ethiopian and Egyptian auxiliaries in the armies of the Persian Emperor Xerxes at Doriscus and Plataea in 480 BC. Images of Ethiopian figures appeared in the northern Mediterranean, first on the island of Cyprus in the early 2nd millennium BC, and later on mainland Greece by the 6th century BC. Ethiopians were also reported among the disciples of the philosophers Aristippus, 356 BC, and Epicurus, 270 BC. Beginning in the 8th century, Nubian and Aksumite pilgrims began to travel to the Holy Lands in Palestine. The establishment of an Ethiopian monastery in Rome, known as Debra Kedus Estefanos, also named Santo Stefano degli Abissini, is a testament to the long-standing connection between Ethiopia and the heart of the Catholic world. In 1534, the Ethiopian envoy Sagga Zayab authored a treatise titled The Faith of the Ethiopians, advocating for the continued independence of his church and the peaceful coexistence of different Christian sects. From 1022 to 1159, the Najahid dynasty, founded by an Abyssinian administrator named Naja, controlled one of the most lucrative trade routes between the Red Sea and the Western Indian Ocean. The Red Sea archipelago of Dalek off the coast of Eritrea served as the base for this Mamluk dynasty of Abyssinian origin. The Najahid rulers established their capital at Zabid in Yemen, struck their own coinage, and received recognition from the Abbasid Caliph. The Portuguese arrival in the Indian Ocean did not halt African exploration of Asia, but rather reoriented it. The career of Mwini Ahmed Bwana Kibai an important 18th century Swahili nobleman, exemplifies this adaptability. In 1724, hoping to expel the Omanis from the coast, Mwinyi Ahmed traveled to Pate in Kenya, then to Barawa in Somalia, from where he took a ship to Surat in India. He moved to Goa in 1725, where he stayed with another Swahili resident in India, Bwana Dao Ofaza. It wasn't until late 1727 that Mwinyi Ahmed and Bwana Dao returned to Mombasa with a Portuguese fleet. The Portuguese city of Goa in India became a hub for Africans, hosting a diasporic community that included visiting royals, envoys, Catholic priests, mercenaries, and servants. It was from this vibrant community in South Asia that the first Africans to travel to Japan originated, arriving on the island nation in the 1540s. A 17th century Japanese folding screen depicting African guests in a house at the port city of Nagasaki provides a visual record of this chapter of African exploration. The history of African maritime exploration is a testament to the ingenuity, resilience, and global interconnectedness of African societies throughout history. Archaeological discoveries, such as the Kilwa coins found on the Australian coast and the Aksumite coins discovered in India, provide tangible proof of the vast distances covered by African sailors. Historical documents, from Chinese imperial chronicles to Portuguese maritime records, offer detailed accounts of African diplomatic missions and commercial ventures. The geographic scope of African maritime exploration was truly global. African sailors navigated the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean, establishing trade networks that connected the Mediterranean world with the riches of Asia. They crossed the Atlantic, developing coastal trade routes that linked communities from Senegal to Angola. They traveled to Europe, establishing diplomatic relations with major powers and contributing to the intellectual and cultural life of medieval and early modern European societies. This history challenges fundamental assumptions about the nature of global exploration and cultural exchange. The conventional account of exploration, which focuses almost exclusively on European voyages of discovery, obscures the reality that Africans were exploring and mapping the world long before Columbus set sail for the Americas. African sailors were crossing the Indian Ocean and establishing trade networks with Asia, while Europe was still emerging from the Dark Ages. By reclaiming this lost history, we not only challenge the misconception of a passive and isolated Africa, but also gain a richer, more accurate understanding of our shared global past. The evidence is clear. Africans were not discovered by the outside world. They had discovered it. They were not passive recipients of foreign influence. They were active shapers of global culture and commerce. This is a history that deserves to be told, remembered, and celebrated as an integral part of the human story of exploration and discovery.